day 580 of the Trump administration, one day after Donald Trump was implicated in a crime in federal court by his longtime former personal lawyer. One day after his former campaign chairman was convicted in federal court. The Washington Post reports tonight on that, quote, at least for now, at least for a day, Trump resisted lashing out in a dramatic and public way. Instead, Wednesday was a moment for calculation and conversation, a pause for a rattled administration, according to White House officials and outside advisors familiar with the discussions. Michael Cohen's lawyer is making it clear his client is ready, willing, and able to share what he knows with Robert Mueller. Associated Press reporter Jonathan Lemire, who's standing by to talk with us tonight, captures the state of affairs in his latest, titled More Dirt on President Trump, ? Cohen's lawyer suggests so. Cohen attorney Lanny Davis made a series of television appearances today. Here's what he said this morning.
Is he hoping for a pardon from President Trump?
Not only is he not hoping for, he would not accept a pardon. He considers a pardon from somebody who has acted so corruptly as president to be something he would never accept.
Earlier this evening, Davis seemed to dial things back a bit, particularly with regard to previous reporting about what Cohen was prepared to tell the special counsel about President Trump and that meeting at Trump Tower.
So Michael Cohen does not have information that President Trump knew about the Trump Tower meeting with the Russians beforehand or even
No, does not. At some point, Mr. Cohen might be able to be useful to the special counsel about whether President Trump knew ahead of time about the hacking of the Hillary Clinton emails. And it's not a certainty. The way he recalls it may or may not be useful to Mr. Mueller.
You can tell perhaps the hour is late. It's been a long week already and people are exhausted. Trump did respond to Michael Cohen's plea today. This morning he wrote, if anyone is looking for a good lawyer, I would strongly suggest that you don't retain the services of Michael Cohen. And Michael Cohen pleaded guilty to 2 counts of campaign finance violations that are not a crime. President Obama had a big campaign finance violation and it was easily settled. Trump also spoke to Fox News about his relationship with Michael Cohen.
He was a lawyer for me for one of many. You know, they always say the lawyer, and then they like to add the fixer. Well, I don't know if there's a fixer. I don't know where that term came from, but he's been a lawyer for me, didn't do big deals, did small deals, not somebody that was with me that much. You know, they make it sound like I didn't live without him. I understood Michael Cohen very well. What turned out he wasn't a very good lawyer, frankly. But he was somebody that was probably with me for about 10 years, and I would see him sometimes.
He then followed that with a denial of Cohen's accusation.
Did you know about the payments?
Later on, I knew. Later on. But you have to understand, Ainsley, what he did, and they weren't taken out of campaign finance. That's a big thing. That's a much bigger thing. Did they come out of the campaign? They didn't come out of the campaign. They came from me, and I tweeted about it. You know, I don't know if you know, but I tweeted about the payments.
President saying there he learned about the payments later on. That would seem to contradict the audio recording that Cohen made while discussing the payment with the president.
I spoke to Alan about it when it comes time for the financing, which will be...
What financing?
We'll have to pay you. So
I'll pay the kid.
No. I got no.
And that recording seemed to contradict the president's answer about the payments on board Air Force One.
Did you know about the $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels? Then why did Michael Cohen make it if there was no truth or allegation?
You have to ask Michael Cohen.
Take this all together, this being the president of the United States, after all. The Washington Post called out the president for his various explanations about these payments, tonight calling them lies. Nevertheless, at the White House today, Press Secretary Sarah Sanders gave a repeated defense of the president.
As the president said, we've stated many times, he did nothing wrong. There are no charges against him. Just because Michael Cohen made a plea deal doesn't mean that that implicates the president on anything. The president did nothing wrong. There are no charges against him. I'm not going to give you a different answer. The president has done nothing wrong. There are no charges against him. There is no collusion. That's what I can tell you about this.
The president has not forgotten about Paul Manafort, who was convicted yesterday of banking and tax fraud and now faces another trial next month. Trump writing this as a show of support, quote, a large number of counts, 10, could not even be decided in the Paul Manafort case. Witch hunt. I feel very badly for Paul Manafort and his wonderful family. Justice, in quotes, took a 12-year-old tax case, among other things, applied tremendous pressure on him. And unlike Michael Cohen, he refused to break Sammy the Bull Gravano style, make up stories in order to get a deal. Such respect for a brave man. Tonight, the president also said this when asked if he was considering pardoning Paul Manafort.
I have great respect for what he's done in terms of what he's gone through. You know, he worked for Ronald Reagan for years. He worked for Bob Dole. He worked, I guess his firm worked for McCain. He worked for many, many people, many, many years. And I would say what he did, some of the charges they threw against him, every consultant, every lobbyist in Washington probably does.
Let's bring in our leadoff panel for a Wednesday night, the aforementioned Jonathan Lemire, White House reporter for the Associated Press, Peter Baker, chief White House correspondent for the New York Times, and Carol Leonnig is back with us, Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative reporter for the Washington Post. Good evening to the three of you, and welcome. Jonathan Lemire, you were inside the West Wing for the split-screen day we had yesterday. What can you report about what that was like and what today was like there?
So this is a West Wing that has become accustomed to bad headlines. But yesterday was a particularly striking one. It was a day for the history books, seeing that image, the dual images of Cohen in court, Manafort in court, both of them getting the word guilty attached to their names. The West Wing sort of went silent. Doors were closed, aides disappeared. There was no immediate response. Eventually, we got a very terse two-sentence response from Sarah Sanders, sort of yes about what reaction to what those developments in the moment. This is a White House that is still reeling, and it's gone to the president as well. According to our reporting, he's been far more subdued the last day or so, sort of distracted, angry, behind closed doors about what has happened, particularly on the Cohen matter. He was able to sort of maintain his discipline last night at the rally. In fact, he didn't even speak about either man while on stage in West Virginia. But today, of course, we saw him start venting. He started on Twitter, including the tweet about if you're looking for a good lawyer, don't go to Michael Cohen, which I think is one of his better efforts of late. And then, he continued onward. And then we had the moment, of course, Sarah Sanders at the podium today, sort of just this rote sort of repetition of just the president doing anything wrong, he's not been charged with a crime, which I don't think is allaying many concerns. The issue is, according to our reporting, there's not much of a battle plan there yet. They put together some talking points. They barely circulated them. Rudy Giuliani is currently golfing in Scotland and was relatively MIA today compared to what he usually is when he's trying to hit back against something threatening the president. They are still reeling. They're trying to figure this out. They're trying to determine the scope of the damage that is still coming.
Peter Baker, your newspaper as well, also with fresh reporting tonight that this was a consequential event yesterday, two of them actually, and this is a subdued president adding to the sense, the feeling of moment.
No question about it. This is a day that sort of put the question of impeachment on the table in a way it hadn't been before. Any White House, of course, would be reeling, as Jonathan describes, given that political reality. Not that the Republican Congress is going to necessarily take up that kind of action against it, but it reinforces the consequences and the stakes involved in this fall's midterm elections. That now is on the table allegations against the president. They go beyond just the Russia case, where there has been, no firm conclusion by prosecutors yet of allegations the president has been participated in something that is a crime by his personal lawyer. That changes things, and now for the next 2 months until the election, you're going to hear a lot of discussion about what the proper remedy is. That Sarah Sanders says the president hasn't been charged with any crimes. Remember, this is the same White House that said the president can't be charged with any crimes. That under the Constitution, their theory anyway, and Justice Department prevailing policy is the president is not capable of being indicted while in office. So when she says he's not charged with any crimes, that's not really telling us anything. The real question, again, comes to Congress and the political process and the midterms that are being held in the next couple of months.
Carol Leonnig, you've covered law enforcement and things justice for a long time, perhaps without even knowing how exciting the beat might become someday. So you have your own reporting for the Washington Post tonight on Michael Cohen specifically. Walk us through the condensed version of what he might know and what might have motivated this decision by him.
What he might know is something his attorney has described in many different ways over the course even of today. So sometimes that's a moving target, Brian. But as for what has happened with his plea agreement, it came together rather rapidly, starting after basically late July. It's not very common for a plea agreement to come together in 2, 3, 4 weeks. But that's really what happened here. And he was under a lot of pressure. He was facing potentially decades in prison based on charges that he'd lied on numerous bank forms, line of credit. He'd lied to get, millions of dollars in loans. And he also faced the potential threat that his family was in danger because some of those loans were ones his wife might have actually been a part of or a party to. And what he decided, and a lot of people would say he made the right call, what he decided was to go for the cap on the amount of time he'd spend in prison. Instead of 40 or 50 years, as Rudy Giuliani said to me today, he's limited this to 5, and he's agreed to plead to 3 different categories of charges. And honestly, the weakest of the charges is the most explosive, the campaign finance violations.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.